This video is my learning how to replace tank bladders with 4 different defective links for the FlowTec brand of water pressure tank. The video went to 24 minutes, so I'm including an index if you want to just jump to a part of my learning experience. The tank bladders can be purchased at cleanflow.net. I don't have any relationship with this company, but I am a customer and I have been using their tanks and they seem to be working pretty darn well. Haven't had any failures, at least, with the clean flow tanks. The FlowTec tanks so far I've had out of 5 tanks, 4 bladders fail. So I'm not impressed with their quality. However, replacing the entire tank is kind of unacceptable given that we don't need to replace the whole tank when we can replace the bladder for 1/3 the cost. Enjoy and leave feedback. Okay, today we're troubleshooting and replacing the bladder on a FlowTec FP3175 tank. We came up to do a check on the tanks. This is a commercial system. There's one tank here and one tank over there. What we noticed is that one tank was totally full, the other one was completely empty. By doing some testing, we wanted to figure out what was the problem, why was one full and the other empty. Both tanks should be set for 2 psi below the cutoff for the low pressure on the tank pump. But with one being totally full, obviously there was something wrong. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the air pressure in both tanks. We'll start with this one. You can't see it from there, but it's looking at about 30 psi, which is about what our cutoff pressure is. Now I'll come over here to this tank. Okay, coming over to this tank, we hook up the air pressure hose and press air. As you can see, it immediately drops to 0. Every time I fill it, it drops to 0. What we have is we have a hose here on the floor that's open, and what's coming through here is the air is blowing out the hose. Therefore, the bladder inside this tank is defective. It's got a hole in it. I'm going to have to pull the bladder out and replace it with a new bladder to repair the tank. So our next step now is to pull this tank out.
Go.
Okay, now here we are with the tank that has a suspected blown out bladder. I've already removed the bolts here using a 1/2-inch socket, removed all the nuts, and now we're going to pull this guy off. Okay, here we go. You might want to take a look at this. This is the sludge that was in the bottom of the tank. There is a hole here, so it appears that it functions, and there's also more holes here, but it is pretty dirty. Looking here, you can see here's the pieces of the bladder right now that are anchored to this bottom. This is the seal that goes between the part I just removed and the rest of the bladder on the inside. My next plan is to get this bladder pulled out, and then we're going to shove the brand new bladder in. Let's see how good that goes. Okay, so anyway, I don't know how hard this thing is going to be to pull out, but there's a bladder in here that goes the full length. So I'm going to grab this guy, and here we go. And I'm going to pull it till it comes out. I think I'm going to be reaching my hand in here to get the rest of the bladder out. I don't think this is the way it should be. So obviously this is going to be coming out piecemeal in little tiny pieces. It might be easier to carve it up on the inside with a box cutter and pull out pieces, or I'll try and get the whole thing out. Let me play with this thing a few minutes and then we'll go back on video. Here I have a drop light inside the hole to see what's going on. And with the drop light inside, you can see that the bladder has completely blown apart and is inside with a huge hole in the top and hanging down. So this is going to be a real fun job to pull out, but I guess cutting it in pieces might be the optimum thing to do. I just wanted to let you guys see what it looked like before I started taking it apart. Okay, so I have a device that I built a long time ago. It's basically just a steel bar with a handle and a hook on the end. I'm going to reach down in here and see what I can find. Actually, there is something down in here. I don't know what it is. It looks like a piece of pipe. Trying to grab it. Not sure what this is. Keeps falling down, but it looks like it's perhaps a fill pipe of some kind. If I can reach it. I think I have it. Okay, I got something. I have no idea what it is. It seems to have a whole bunch of this black stuff all over it, but it's just a solid piece of pipe. Interesting. I guess we're gonna have to figure out where this thing goes. There's no glue on the end. Doesn't look like it's been glued in. Okay. And the camera doesn't do justice, but what it appears to me on the inside is the bladder is stuck all the way up at the top with a hole in it. And the piece that I pulled out was the bottom. The hole that we're looking at is the part that's the bottom of that bladder. So the bladder got stuck to the roof and could not come down, so it ripped from the main seal down here up to the top. And so it's way up there. That camera will not film inside of this thing very well. Just take my word for it. So we're gonna have to reach all the way up there. It looks like the bottom of the bladder is right about here. So I may be using that steel pole a little bit more to pull it down. Oh, let's try it right now. Can it reach? Yes, it can. Son of a gun. Okay. Take out my drop light, which is now full of all the goobers, and here's our bladder. You can see that here. And here is the hole where it's separated from the part on the bottom that I removed. So this part here, it slides back and forth, and I'm going to have to get it out. It looks like I'm going to have to do a hosing out of the inside because the metal part of this container has been contaminated with this black sludge, whatever it is. I'm wondering if it's some kind of graphite or something to keep the bladder from sticking to the walls, perhaps. I guess it didn't work. At any rate, I'm going to try pulling this thing out in a few minutes, and I'll be back as soon as I get my hands cleaned up here. Okay, well, what we've done is we've pulled this magical piece out of the bottom of this tank that was just laying in the bottom, and I cleaned up this piece. What it appears is that the two are supposed to be together like that. And I'm trying to figure out what this thing does. It keeps falling off real easy, but my guess is the bladder connects around these 6 bolts and then comes up and around and over and then back down to the other side. My guess is this keeps the bladder from coming downward and allows the air pressure to push in on the sides, so that way the cycling of your well pump is less often yet. So this thing is supposed to be stationary there. I'm looking at this thing and it really does come off real easy. I've decided, perhaps to my demise, that I'm going to glue this guy back in. Now this is PVC and this is ABS. The two do not glue together easily. There's a special glue, which I do not have, that will glue the two together and it will stick. So I'm gonna have to go and get some of that later on. In the meantime, I'll continue taking this bladder out. But this should be a piece that glues on. Right now, my fear is I'm going to be trying to put this thing in and it's going to fall off as I'm sliding it in. and I need something better. And perhaps that's the reason why this tank failed, is because this fell down, and it fell down. So, okay, we're now taking the bladder out of a second tank, and all we've done so far is we've just pulled the bladder a little bit out and put a couple of clamps on it. What our plan to do now is to anchor these two together and use hydraulics and lift the barrel up, pulling this part down. I built a device. All it is a couple of pieces of angle iron, and I just welded some chain onto it. The idea being that if we get this down low enough, we simply put this apart, slam it together, tie it, and then with this chain we pull it out using the lift from the forklift. We're going to see how that works. Never done this part before, but we'll see what happens. Okay, they say the third time's a charm. We tightened the wahooza out of these clamps, so these things are really tight. It was a lot of work taking this running thread and squeezing it as tight as we did. And I think in part the reason why it came off before is because it was also wet and slimy, so it was slippery. But now we've got it tightened enough that it should not be a problem. You can see here we put this chain on so that way we can see it easier, and you can see it on the camera a little bit easier. But we just made a short chain for our device that we built. Now I'm going to again attempt to push down on the up button and remove this button. Okay, one finger down. Here goes. And ladies and gentlemen, that's how you remove a bladder without breaking a sweat. Now, of course, we have a few dollars worth of equipment that we did it with, and we had to make a little bit of intervention for a clamp. But you can see how it's done and the kind of work you're going to need to get it all. Again, you don't need this expensive equipment. Another tree stump, anchoring the tank to the tree stump, and then on the bladder, attach somehow to that bottom piece and hook the other end up to a bumper of a car, steel bumper of course, and move the car forward. Might be just as ticket. That's how you get the thing out without breaking the sweat. Thank you. All right. Okay, we're going to try a pull bladder out lateral mode with, again, I have an advantage of having a forklift, but you might have something like a car that you could hook up to. We just have this thing strapped up. We took, this time, a pair of vice grips, a pair of them, and clipped it onto both sides of this one particular tank just to see what would happen. Hey, it might work, it might not work, but we're going to give it a shot. We'll see what happens. Here goes. Okay. That's an easy way to do that. So we've now removed the bladder. We have one more tank we need to remove. We have a bunch of bladders from these FlowTec tanks. I have another bladder I want to go get. I'm going to do it again. So let's try one more time. Okay, now we're going to take another bladder out using the same system, using my forklift, a la you might want to use the bumper of your car, and you can see it's strapped in nice and tight. We used very large vice grips that I happen to have, and we clamped onto either side of the bladder. We just took a chain and tied it to this tree stump, and it's hooked on. And again, I'm going to back out. The only thing we're showing with this one versus the previous bladder removal is there are two styles. The one with the welded on feet, there's 3 of them, and the one that has a plastic base. The plastic base is the newer one sold by Tractor Supply. At any rate, we're just going to pull this one out and show you how this one works. We may not be successful, you never know. This is a dry bladder. The one we just pulled out was wet because it ruptured and there was water on the inside. So let's see what this one does. Backing up. Okay, so there you see, even a dry bladder can be pulled out just by hooking up a couple of very large clamps. Those are kind of expensive buggers, but actually, if you can talk your wife into buying a forklift, more power to you. You have to have one to fix the darn tanks. At any rate, you now know how to get these guys out. It's not that difficult. Getting them in takes about as long as it does to take it out, but you just got to know how to roll it. And I'm going to show you that in the next film. Thank you. At this point, you may consider where you're going to purchase your replacement bladder. A company that I've been using is called Clean Flow Utility Supply Company from Canada. Again, remember that it's another country and you will have a different value of the dollar depending on when you purchase your bladder, so your price may be different. However, I've purchased several bladders from these people and they all seem to function fine. I also want to make sure you know I have no affiliation or relationship with FlowTec other than being a customer. So at any rate, give them a shot if you're needing bladders. They do seem to have the full line of bladders from FlowTec tanks. So if you have a different size tank, when you look at get on their website, you do a search for U20-20, you'll come up with the page that I have now on the screen. And if you scroll to the bottom, it'll show all the different bladders they have for FlowTec. So here's your location on where to purchase them, and good luck with your installation. Here's the tank as it as it arrived. And you can see they folded it different than the way it's got to go in the tank. It has to go in curled up this way. It appears that it's got some kind of a high gloss plastic lining on the inside. Not sure what it is, but it's very hard. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bathe this in a bathtub of hot water to make it as pliable as possible, and then I'm going to roll it using this as my center and roll the sides in on both sides, so it'll go on over like this, go over like this, to make it into a long cylindrical tube that goes in that hole. And we'll see how much luck I have at getting it to work. I'm also going to use some string or cord or something once I get it wound up to tie it together, so that way it'll be easy to pull off. See what happens. Turn it on. Okay. Okay. What we've done here is we have a bladder that we've heated up with warm water 2 days ago, and we coiled it up to get it at this natural bend. It's now cooled off, of course, but it's still been kept warm in the house. Now Chuck and I are going to roll this up tight, we hope, to get it inside. So we're rolling it together to make it into a nice small bundle. Pull it, go back. Now, also, if you'll notice, we put a couple of straps down simply to make it easier, so we can just grab these things and tie it up. And now if you'll notice, this bladder now looks more like a, well, it looks like a really huge joint. But at any rate, this is our bladder ready to go inside a tank. And what we'll do is we will now proceed to anchor the tank down. I'm going to use a forklift. Ready? Go. Yep. Okay, so here's one of the tanks. Here's another one that we're going to be replacing. These bladders seem to fail quite frequently on these FlowTec tanks. At any rate, here's the one bladder that we just did. We just rolled it up like this. And you can see here that this thing actually fits in pretty darn well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this guy loose here. There we go. I'm going to hold him tight with my hand so it doesn't come out or come apart. Now I'm going to continue pushing him in. Not really a whole lot of work here. Now I'm ready for the second part. Well, the second bulge anyway. I'm going to hold it down as I pull it apart so it doesn't expand on me. And now I go in the rest of the way. Okay. Now what we'll be doing is I'll be reaching my arm in here and manipulating it to unfold it, because it's folded pretty tight. But once it's unfolded, this lip will be around here, just like this one. This is the old bladder, by the way, for this tank, but it'll be just stuck around there like that when I get it undone. And we'll be ready to bolt this piece together. So I'm going to sit here and fiddle with this thing, and we'll show you what it looks like when we get done. Okay, as you can see, I simply unfolded it on the inside and everything went nice and smooth. Here's your bottom piece, and your 1¼ line will fit to here. On all the FlowTecs, wherever the label is, actually if we look at this one right here, you can, on this one that's bad, the label's right there. We have an arrow right here. This is where, if we were putting this one together, this would be coming up this way. On this particular tank, we happen to have the label straight down, so this will go down like this, and it goes in this way. So it's going to be down like this, aiming right through the center of this. All we're going to do is we're going to slide this thing up, bolt it down, and we're ready to go.